the sad truth is violence against women happens every day. Last week, the World Health Organization reported that 1 in 3 women, around 736 million, will suffer physical or sexual violence at some point. So what is it about Sarah Everard's story that has sparked this international conversation? Laura Bates, the founder of the Everyday Sexism Project and author of Men Who Hate Women, is here to tell us more about this. Laura, good morning. I'm sad to have you here on a day that this seems so much more topical given the press conference we just heard out of Atlanta. And I want to get to that in a second. But first, what is it about Everard's case that seems to be a tipping point when it comes to this conversation about violence against women? Is it the fact that she seems to have done everything right? As Maggie explained, she took a well-lit route home. She was wearing her sneakers. She texted her boyfriend. Is that what's making this case take on this global voice?
Well, I think in part it resonates with women who have been indoctrinated to think that we have to take these precautions. I think that many women can picture themselves in that situation, walking home, taking all of those precautions. So that does bring it very close to home. But there is also an element here of the stories that the media chooses to platform. And of course, this idea that she did everything she was supposed to do, she was just walking home, has trended around the world. It really shows us that we are more prepared to listen to and sympathize with some victims of sexual and domestic and male violence than others. There have been other recent cases of older women of color here in the UK who have gone missing and been murdered, and the same level of outcry hasn't happened. So in part, I think we have a media lens here of sort of institutionalized misogyny and racism around which victims we choose to listen to and which stories we choose to raise up. Of course, this is an incredibly tragic case, and it's right that there is this outcry. But less than a year ago, 2 black women were murdered here in the UK in a park, again, just outside London. And police officers in that case were found to have taken selfies of themselves next to the bodies, the dead bodies of 2 black women. We didn't see the same level of public outcry there. So I think there are a number of issues going on here.
And just now we finished hearing this press conference out of Atlanta of a shooting spree that happened there. The suspect is thought to have killed 8 victims here. And he is apparently telling investigators that he targeted these massage parlors because he blames them for essentially enabling his sex addiction. When you tie these cases together, what do you think we as the press and the public in general needs to keep in mind when we're looking at a case like this?
Well, I think we have to be very mindful of speculating before motive has been proven. But what I would say is that again and again, when there are cases where women are massacred by men, we don't necessarily even pause to point that out. The news coverage of this particular tragic case in Atlanta has quite rightly raised issues and concerns around abuse against Asian Americans. But I've seen very little coverage that has mentioned the fact that the vast majority of victims were also women, and women working in a particular profession. And if you have a look, for example, at a case that's been recently in Toronto, where a teenage boy walked into a massage parlor and attacked 2 women with a machete, killing one of them, the misogyny in that case was proven to be the motive that was going on. So I think we need to recognize that when men attack women, we don't necessarily even stop to recognize male violence as the issue. And we often don't even consider the possibility of extremist misogyny as a motive in these crimes, though we are prepared to consider the possibility of other motives. And of course, in many cases, there can be more than one of those motives that are very much intersectional.
And back to the Everard case, how significant do you think it is that it's a police officer that's charged with her murder and kidnapping?
I think it's extremely significant. And in fact, he isn't the only police officer to have been charged with a crime like this. This week in the UK, another police officer has also been charged with rape and sexual assault. There is rightful anger here about the institutionalized racism and misogyny in a system that is completely failing to protect women and girls. Here in the UK, just 1.5% of rape cases reported to the police results in a charge or summons. Rape has essentially been decriminalized. And so I think it's right that people are extremely angry that the police officers who have been involved in these cases, the police officers taking selfies of themselves next to murder victims. Another police officer in this case has been suspended for sending jokes about the victim and about the crime scene to other police officers. So I think we are right to be saying there is a systemic institutional issue here within our criminal justice system. And until we tackle that, we can't just say that women and girls should come forward to the police, because we can't guarantee that they'll be safe faith when they do.
And earlier you said that extreme misogyny can be a motive in some of these cases, but you've also said that this sort of violence can stem from low-level, normalized sexism and discrimination against women being ingrained in our society. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the response from this has been to treat it as an isolated incident. But of course, what we're really looking at is a pattern. If we live in a society where the lower level, more normalized incidents are excused, for example, just this week in the UK, we've had a study show that 97% of young women are sexually harassed in public spaces. But if we try to speak up about that, we're often told that we're overreacting, that catcalls are compliments, that we should just learn to enjoy it. But if we designate women's body as public property in public spaces, which is what we're really doing when we minimize those other forms of sexism, those lower level things, we're creating a power imbalance in our society, and that has a massive impact in the way in which we view and think about violence against women. It's not to say that one leads directly to the other, but certainly that if we let these attitudes go unchecked and unchallenged, they create a more fertile ground, if you like, from which some of the more serious abuses can more easily spring. And if we don't recognize that spectrum and those connections, then it's a very difficult problem to tackle.
And now we're seeing women around the world speaking out, sharing their stories of harassment. But what do you think it will take to get real substantive change here?
Well, I think we need to see policymakers and organizational leaders step up. Women are incredibly courageously, once again, and of course we've seen this in recent years, once again pouring out a collective cry of grief and rage, sharing their stories. What we need is for people to listen, and not just listen and say, wow, that's shocking, but listen and do something about it. We need to see sexual offences taken more seriously. We need to see better funding for frontline sexual violence services. We need to see legislation to tackle sexual offences in public spaces that doesn't really exist here in the UK for these lower level issues. We need to see education and policymakers making sure that young people are taught about sexual consent and healthy relationships at school, instead of just teaching girls not to wear short skirts. So I think a number of really concrete shifts that we could see that would make a difference here.
All right, Laura Bates of the Everyday Sexism Project, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.